are welcoming to our stage now Bjorn Olsen and Marisa Ullman. They are running for state representative for District 22A. We will give you each 1 minute for an opening statement, and we will start with Bjorn, please.
Well, thank you, everyone. I'm Representative Bjorn Olsen. I currently represent the counties of Faribault County, Martin County, Jackson, and part of Watonwan County, but I don't currently represent Madelia. So every 10 years, the United States does a census, and we redraw our lines in accordance with how the population has shifted. The way this is going to work now with the next election, so going into 2023, this district will be 22A, and it'll include all of Madelia. It'll go into Blue Earth County, and we grab a lot of population there. We lose Jackson County, we lose a part of Faribault County. So like I said, I'm Representative Bjorn Olsen. I'm from Fairmont, Minnesota. My family's lived in that district for 150 years. We've been farmers the entire time. So I currently farm. I farm south of Blue Earth independently, and then I help my father out on his farm over in the East Chain, which is south of Fairmont. I'll get into a lot more of my experience in life, but I've only got 15 seconds left, so I thank you all so much for being here, and I'm looking forward to having a great conversation about how we can best represent Madelia.
Thank you. Marisa, you have 1 minute for an opening statement, please.
Hi, I'm Marisa Ullman. I'm a fifth generation Watonwan County farmer, small farmer. My husband and I also own a small business. We run a feed mill and we raise livestock. Right now we're dealing with 3,200 chickens. Fun stuff going on there. My educational background is political science, philosophy, and economics. I have been, as well as a farmer, a small business owner, I've also been a city clerk for a small town in the area. Like Bjorn said, his district did formally include Madelia, but the district that we are being served by right now is Representative Munson. And as we all know, Munson has had a difficult time dealing with businesses and dealing with farmers in Madelia, Minnesota. And so I hope you guys actually fill out some questions and send them over to your ushers. Thank you.
Thank you. Marisa, we will start with you for the first question. What are the characteristics that you feel our area needs in their state legislature? Why would you be a good legislator? And what is your agenda in running?
Well, 30 years ago, I was on the debate and discussion team for most of high school, and we're dealing with a lot of the same issues that we were 30 years ago. And the way we had it set up was that we were given a question and a table of 9, 10 of us were setting about to solve. That's kind of the way I've gone about my whole life, is not taking just 1 or 2 answers, but actually getting to the bottom of it and researching it. When my neighbor was spreading manure in a way I didn't think was correct, I spent my Saturday night researching manure laws. Not because that was the most exciting thing to do, but because I wanted to find out, hey, is what he's doing, is that legal? And so what I would bring to it is an interest. I'm accessible, and I'm a problem solver.
Thank you. Bjorn, what are the characteristics that you feel our area needs in their state legislator? And why would you be a good legislator? And what is your agenda in running?
So when I originally ran for this office, I ran as an option. I said, this district depends on an individual who can passionately represent this district and has the same morals and values that this district holds dear. I came and I said, hey, I've got a little bit of experience in life. I'm a former school teacher, a conservative social studies teacher at Blue Earth area middle school. I taught 7th grade social studies there. I'm a farmer. I'm a captain in the United States Army Reserves. I'm a representative now, but before that I was a small town mayor. And on top of that, I'm a father. I've got 2 wonderful children, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I've been married for the last 9 years now. So that's what I bring to it. I bring a lot of experience that a lot of us can kind of connect with, but also I come with a passion to represent the morals and the values that this district holds. Thank you.
Thank you. Bjorn, we will start with you for the next question, please. How do you propose to represent and support Greater Minnesota at the state capitol so that our area receives its share of state resources?
Oh, an absolutely amazing question. So for your information, I've been representing your city here in Madelia for 2 years now because I actually chief authored a bill to provide $10.3 million worth of infrastructure money to help your water, because I was talking just recently at the MARC meeting, that Madelia Area Redevelopment Corporation meeting, about how your big employer here, Tony Downs Foods, needs some assistance in getting the water that they need, and your city needs this. You've got 60-year-old infrastructure underneath your ground. So I had authored that bill 2 years ago, and we almost had it across the finish line. It fell apart the last night of session last year. So that's going to be one of our big asks for this year. That's what we're going to be fighting for in rural Minnesota, but for you especially. I've got a lot of experience in the Transportation Committee. That's one of the committees that I serve on. I authored a bill that resulted in $18 million going to small cities for their roads. Now, for those of you who don't know, small cities do not receive a single penny from the gas tax. You have gas stations here in Madelia, you are paying the gas tax, and your city gets nothing for it. Well, I authored a bill 2 years ago resulting in $18 million to be redistributed to small cities, but that's not enough. We're working on a bill that almost made it this last year. We're going to get it across next year when the Republicans are in the majority, and we're going to make sure that small cities and townships receive a fair share of that money, the tax money that we're all contributing to.
Thank you. Marisa, how do you propose to represent and support Greater Minnesota at the state capitol so that our area receives its share of state resources?
Well, one of the things I think very few people know about Minnesota is that since 2016, according to the USDA statistics, we lose 500 farm families in Minnesota a year. That's 500 families a year since 2016. That means that those families are no longer attending our small schools, they're no longer attending our churches, they're no longer shopping on our main streets. We haven't lost tillable acres. We have lost the families that keep these small towns together. And Madelia is a wonderful place and has really been a shining example. But when you look over the last 20, 30 years of what had happened in some of our small towns, Truman does not have a grocery store. There is no grocery store between Madelia and Fairmont. And so, yes, we concentrate on our small towns, but if we don't keep our farmers, we don't keep our livelihood here. We all saw what happened in the 80s, when main streets were decimated, and we're still building up from that problem of the 80s. When Republicans talk about how they're going to help Greater Mankato, or Greater Minnesota, one of the things they neglect to mention is that the Farm Bill was introduced at $60 million. And by the time the Republicans got done with it, it was slashed to $7.5 million, and Munson still voted against it.
Is there a rebuttal on it?
You may have 30 seconds
Excellent,
rebuttal.
thanks. I'll shine a little bit of information on that. So that she is correct in the fact of how it began, but a lot of that farm bill, that ag bill that I did vote for because I love my farmers and am one, but a lot of that had to do with water in the metro. They were talking about the drought. We had this last bill just last year that was passed. The biggest portion of that bill had to do with metropolitan water and drought relief to ensure that they had a sustainable water access. That was the majority of the money. Also, planting trees.
Thank you. Marisa, you get to start us out with the next question. How do you propose to create more jobs in rural Minnesota?
You know, we all live here because we choose to, because we love it. Most of my family has gone away for 10 years, 20 years, and have all come back. I was gone for a dozen years, and I came back to raise my son here. Now he's gone off to California and finished college. But one of the things that we need to do, especially with the broadband access, we need to create job opportunities in our homes. And so it's not as important to be able to drive to Mankato. We have opportunities for homeowners to start up their small businesses right there, as long as they're given the access to rural broadband. And really, starting your own business You need as much help as you can. And one of the things that we can provide is help provide infrastructure. We're lucky enough to have Christensen Communications, who put in fiber optics to our place a few years ago. But a lot of these rural areas are not lucky enough to have a local telephone company that cares about them as much as we do. And so we really need to expand those opportunities where people can work remotely, have the kind of life they want to live, and still be able to have a well-paying job.
Thank you. Bjorn, how do you propose to create more jobs in rural Minnesota?
Excellent. Broadband's a huge thing. I'm a large supporter of it. Your previous representative was not so much of a supporter of it, but you can tell that Representative Olson is a large supporter of rural broadband. I think it's going to bring great technology into our area. I highly want it to succeed. Also, we're talking about infrastructure. That bill that we're having redrafted, we're looking at the numbers. Remember, inflation is the #1 issue for voters in this election. Inflation in the economy, that's their #1 issue. Second issue is public safety. That's according to the polling that we've done across this entire state. So those are the 2 issues. Infrastructure is one of the big things that we need to take care of. And with rising costs of living, we have to make sure that we take care of it soon. So you can count on me for supporting your infrastructure to make sure you have a viable, survivable community, good water, good electricity, good broadband. Bring these big city bucks down here, because I came home after I went to school, and the reason why is because it's more affordable, it's a lovely place to live, and when people in the Twin Cities and in the metro can realize that they can earn big city bucks utilizing the internet, and they can be here, that's where everyone wants to be. A rural scenario is what everyone wants, so let's get them here. Let's bring it.
Thank you. Bjorn, we will start with you for this next question, please. Our state has a large fund balance, which is anticipated to grow again this year. How do you propose to deal with this surplus?
We were so close to an agreement last session in the tax bill. Now, the #1 thing when we're talking about this money, understand whose money it is. It's the taxpayers' money. It is the individuals who worked every day, owned property in the state, and bought things in the state. Those are the people who are contributing to that fund. And the big things that we want to do, we want to get your Social Security to be non-taxed by the state. All right. Right now, we're one of only a handful of states that tax your Social Security as income. It's enough of that. But that doesn't apply to someone like me who's still working. All right, so what we want to do is we want to cut the first tier of the income tax bracket. That's your first $40,000 worth of earned income. Right now, the state of Minnesota taxes that at 5.3%. We want to cut that in half. All right, that's $1,000 in tax relief to every single working Minnesotan. That's who we're focusing on providing that money back to, is the people who paid it. Not to everyone, not in a check that's written out saying, here's some contribution to the inflation problem that we already have. It's long-lasting tax reform and tax relief. That's the answer, and that's what our plan is next year in the majority. Thank you.
Thank you. Marisa, our state has a large fund balance, which is anticipated to grow again this year. How do you propose to deal with this surplus?
I think we need to recognize why we have this surplus. And it's because our state officials are all Democrats, every single one of them, and they have been. And so providing that policy has created this fund. And what does a Republican want to do but hand out $1,000? I want to fund our schools. I want to fund our free lunch programs. I think all children deserve to have access to free lunch, whether you make $1,000 a day or $1,000 a month. We need to make sure we have mental health professionals in our schools. We need to make sure that we have nurses in our schools. Education is the key, not a $1,000 tax cut. We need to fund what our future is going to be.
Thank you.
Is there time for, do I only get one rebuttal, or how many rebuttals do I get?
You can have one after each question, so you may have 30 seconds.
When we're talking about who's in control and who's doing this, over the last 10 years, we've had a governor who's been a Democrat. And our budget, our state spending, has gone from $30 billion to $53 billion. In 10 years, an administration in the control of the Democratic Party has almost doubled the amount of money that our state has spent. All right, that's not and that money's coming from somewhere. It's coming from your pockets.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Are we still talking about the fund balance? Okay. Our state has a large fund balance, which is anticipated to grow again this year. How do you propose to deal with the surplus?
I think that we have to enjoy that we have a surplus, and we have had a Democratic governor for a dozen years. We need to use that surplus for our communities, not for individual tax cuts. And because this state has been so well stewarded through many difficult issues, we have an opportunity to finally fund our schools.
Okay. You can keep the mic. The next question is, what changes do you feel should be made for public education in Minnesota?
Well, I think I've said this a few times. I went to school here in Bedelia, Minnesota, and I was a participant of free and reduced lunch. The way that they did this 30 years ago, 35 years ago, is that they gave you a different colored ticket. And so you knew who was paying for free lunch and who was paying for full price lunch, and I tell you what, it was a little bit embarrassing. And so that stuck with me. I think that we have to have universal free lunch, free breakfast. We all saw what happened with COVID. We saw how much our schools were having to take care of. We saw mental health breakdowns. We saw physical health breakdowns. We saw that we didn't have daycare. We saw all of the problems that we expect our schools to solve for all of our students. We need to have universal pre-K. We need to have access to trade schools. Our district is one of the only districts in this state that you cannot go to a trade school in. We don't have them. They're not here. You have to get in your car and drive 35 miles to get one if you live in Minnesota, or if you live in Bedelia. And so having those schools have more of an option to do online learning, to do AP classes online. We've all learned how to do it now. I Zoom with the best of them. Let's use those resources that we had a crash course in and help our schools.
Thank you. Bjorn, what changes do you feel should be made for public education in Minnesota?
In my life, I have never found that the answer to solving a problem is by throwing more money at the issue. I've never found that to be the answer. But what is the answer was up here at this table. They were here, they were the first ones to speak. The school boards need to have the power to make the right decisions. They need to be provided with the support, and they need to be provided with the funding. We actually voted, last year I voted for the education bill. It was a 4.5% increase in school funding, all right? They actually got more money than what they had originally thought they were gonna get. So we wanna support our schools, but we wanna do it from the bottom up. We wanna give it to the school boards, the administrations, the ones who know how to educate their students the best. One thing that I've realized is when I got to St. Paul, I realized that someone from northern Minnesota is very different from someone from southern Minnesota. It's like a 10-hour drive to get up there. They live life differently and they understand life differently. And people in the metropolitan areas of this state, they understand it in an entirely different way as well. We educate our students according to their needs to succeed in this world. And that is what we have to do to have education succeed. It's not to provide money to the Minnesota Department of Education. That's not the answer. The trickle-down effect, as we've seen through education the last couple of years, is not the answer. We've seen Minneapolis and St. Paul schools absolutely failing in their test scores, and all they want to do is throw more money at the problem. There was a bill last year in the democratically held majority. There was an education bill that was going to throw almost twice as much money at Minneapolis than it was in Bedelia.
Thank you. Bjorn, we will begin with you for this question. What role should the state play in addressing the health care crisis?
Yeah, this is a big one for a lot of individuals. Healthcare is one of the most expensive aspects of our life. And what needs to happen is we have to realize that it's the exact same argument of what we talked about with college education. All right? When my mom went to school in the 80s, she spent $4,000 a semester. I spent almost $40,000 a semester. I had to join the Army to pay for school. And the only thing that changed during that time was the United States government guaranteed that every single person should be able to afford to go to school. So what did the schools do? They realized that the United States was opening up a checkbook for them, and they raised prices. All right, we need to address the issue, but it's not through the United States government or the state of Minnesota guaranteeing that every single person has this access to socialized medicine. We must have a good relationship between the private and the public sector, and we need to work towards driving those costs down in a capitalistic idea.
Thank you. Marisa, what role should the state play in addressing the health care crisis?
Well, I actually will answer that question. Minnesota is one of the luckiest places we can be. We have a vibrant community. We have a vibrant hospital here in Medelia, Minnesota. And the key to keeping our vibrant healthcare here is to be helping these small towns keep their hospitals, keep their independence. We see Medelia as a thriving hospital and clinic. And the only reason that they can help do that partly is through state funds. If we lose our hospitals, we lose our doctors, we lose our dentists, our chiropractors, our eye doctors, we're gonna have a hard time. If you go to Medelia Hospital, you're gonna see an eye doctor, you're gonna see a dentist, you're gonna see physical therapy. They have an MRI scheduling thing. We see this thing eroding in the small towns because people think that tax dollars are not the answer. But what are tax dollars for? They are to help society, all of it. And paying your taxes is a good and noble thing if we all pay our taxes and we elect responsible leaders to distribute them.
Thank you. Okay, this is the last question, and Marisa, we will begin with you. How do you propose to have a diverse party state government run effectively for the people?
Well, one of the things that I notice when I look around this room is not a lot of diversity. And I don't see a whole lot of people reaching out. When you look at people's campaign websites, how many people have a Spanish page there? There was a multicultural event in St. James last weekend. I didn't see a whole lot of candidates there. When we're looking at different people, we've got to go to them. We deal with our neighbor who's an El Salvadorian, one of our best friends, and we talk to him and his community to find out, what do you want government to look like? How does it work for you? How do you see it? How do you have access? And Jose said, I've been telling my friends that if I don't understand, because why would he? Many of the people who graduated don't fully understand civic government. But if he has a question, he comes to me. And I explain it to him in a way that he goes away and he's satisfied and he felt like he understood. And I think bringing that sort of accessibility and fundamental knowledge of our government and civic system is what's key to helping people access it.
Thank you. Bjorn, how do you propose to have a diverse party state government run efficiently for the people?
So it's important to understand that in St. Paul, I am one of 134 members of the House of Representatives. 134, so that means I'm one vote. Now that means I'm less than 1% of the answer to any vote that we have to have, because remember, you have to have 50 plus 1, so 50% plus 1 vote in order to make that happen. So I can't just barge around saying, I'm going to make this happen, I'm going to get this done. It's all about relationship building. It's about collaborating with others. You have to have 68 people in order to pass a bill. In order to make some good happen for this state, you need 68. Now, Watonwan County is going to be really lucky because they're going to have 2 representatives. So they actually have more than 1% of the entire vote here in the state of Minnesota. But collaborating and relationship building, and that's one thing that I feel I've done a really great job of doing in fostering over the last 2 years. I was elected by my caucus to be a minority leader. So I'm an assistant minority leader within the caucus. I sit at a table with 8 other members and we drive the strategy for the party. That means that the 59 members of my caucus trusted me with that responsibility. They said, Bjorn Olson has what it takes to collaborate, to build those relationships, and to help us drive strategy to make this state a better place. So the answer to your question is absolutely 100% relationship building and collaborating with others to make this state run.
Thank you. We do have a question that has come in from our audience. So Bjorn, I will begin with you. This person says, I'm disenchanted with my lifelong party and I'm sick of party politics. How can you convince me to vote?
Yeah, it's a real tragedy. If you look at the way politics was 40, 50 years ago, it was because everyone over in DC, they didn't travel home every single weekend. They didn't fly home every weekend. And so their kids grew up together, they went to school together, they talked about the same thing, and everyone read out of the same newspaper and listened to the same radio program. And what we've seen over the last 50 years is that we've become polarized. And it's very easy to stand here and fight and argue and say this or say that. If you look at my Facebook page, I do the very best I can not to say a single bad thing about anyone, because that's not the way I want to play this game. I don't want to be the guy who trash talks others or gets a lot of likes on my Facebook page because I said something that was really, ooh, I dug on a good one right there. I'm trying to live what I think we need. We as a state, we as a country need to calm down. We need to simmer down. We need to take a deep breath and realize that in the end, everyone wants the best that they possibly can for their society. There are very few people in St. Paul, there's a couple maybe, who are in it for themselves. But understand that the majority of the people who are sitting in those seats are doing the very best that they think they can do for their people, all right? So when you talk to someone who disagrees with you, absolutely, you need to understand that they see it differently and they truly and honestly see it differently. And so it's about respect. You don't have to agree, but you have to respect each other. And you have to make sure that you're working towards a solution.
Thank you. Marisa, this person says, I'm disenchanted with my lifelong party and sick of party politics. How can you convince me to vote?
The only way you're going to stop with the party politics, the extreme, is to vote, is to vote, is to vote. I was living in Atlanta in 1996. I was living in the district that Newt Gingrich won. And he instructed his fellow congressmen to no longer sit at tables with Democrats and Republicans, that you needed to hide in your hole and only associate with those that you did. Since the advent of Newt Gingrich back in 1996 in Fox News, we're not listening to the same CBS News, NBC News anymore. There is one news station and one party for one group of us, and 17 news stations for the rest of us. I don't believe in the private bickering, but like Bjorn said, he's just one of a cog. He's one of a cog led by Jensen, who wants to cut all education. I mean, he's on TV saying that he wants to support charter schools and doing absolutely the antithesis of what we're talking about here. And so you can be one person trying to make a difference, and you can be a good person, but at the end of the line, he's going to vote with Jensen all the way down the line, no matter what, because Republicans don't let you step out of bounds.
Thank you. You may have 30 second rebuttal.
So there are definitely times in which I voted differently from my party, but there's not a single time where any of the Democrats up there voted against their party because they were in the majority and they had to have the votes. Now, I'll tell you, we had a really, really small, minor pro-life bill that was up for a vote. And guess what? The pro-life Democrats stood up and said, oh, I wish I could vote for this, but it's against the rules. It's not germane to the bill. We can't vote it. So, Speaker, I would recommend that you see that as voting it down. And guess what? We didn't get to vote on it because that pro-life Democrat didn't want to vote for it because she knew that her party wasn't going to let her. So don't play games. Don't try and attack me and say that I'm not going to do something when you don't know.
I know that when he ran 2 years ago, the only thing he wanted to talk about was giving everybody a gun and a complete ban on all abortions. I've watched his tapes, I've seen it, I've talked to the other candidates. Don't let him fool you. He is a Republican, he is extreme, and he is bad for Madelia.
Okay, so we will give you now each 1 minute as a closing statement. And Marisa, we will begin with you, please.
You know, there's a lot of issues we didn't get to talk about tonight. We focused a lot on education. We focused zero on climate, very little on ag, and nothing on gun rights and nothing on abortion rights. And I just want to say, I was appalled. Women have had the right to choose what was right for themselves for 50 years. My mother had a right that my grandchild might not. And it comes down to an issue of trust. A lot of you in the audience may remember when you needed to have your husband's permission to get a checking account, to get a credit card, to buy a home. Where does it end? When do we start trusting women to do what is right for themselves, their families, their God, and their futures? Don't leave it to a politician, and don't leave it to a lawyer.
Thank you. Bjorn, you now may have 1 minute for closing statements.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for the opportunity to speak. I'd love to talk with you more. I'll give you my cell phone number at some point in time if you would like, and you can call me, and don't call the office, because guess what? He's just going to call me and tell me that you called. I really appreciate the opportunity. I hope that I've earned your vote, but if I haven't, I hope you do vote. Now, I have the experience as a sitting member of the House of Representatives. We're very confident that we'll hold the majority, and we'll be able to do some real great stuff for the state of Minnesota and move it in the right direction. Just to remind you, some of my experience: a teacher, a farmer, a soldier, former mayor, a father, and a husband. If that option is the option that you think is the right one, the morals and values that I hold, if that's what you believe is the right decision, I so would appreciate your vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you both for your time tonight and for your willingness to throw your hat in the ring to serve our state. Thank you.